Hello and welcome to Tech24 with me, Rebecca Bowering. Coming up in the programme, we know who's through to round 2 of the French elections, but did we find out before we were meant to? France's attempt to impose a blackout on results sparked hashtag ingenuity on Twitter. We look at how the web rewrites the electoral rulebook. And destroy your maker, that's the tagline of Radical Entertainment's hard-hitting new fantasy game. We catch up with a real-life Prototype 2 hero and see if it's the slasher sequel that fans have been waiting for. The first round of France's presidential elections caused some upsets, not least on the internet. Twitter was defiant in the face of the authorities' threat to fine anyone found leaking the results of the vote before an 8 p.m. embargo. Microbloggers dreamed up a new code to bypass those strict electoral laws. Eric Olander was following developments for us. Eric, Hungarian wine, Dutch cheese, Rolexes and flans. What was this double language all about?
That was all the coded language that internet users, particularly on Twitter, use to get around these very archaic rules that the French government has to put effectively a moratorium on discussing and predicting the outcome of the elections before the official 8 o'clock deadline on Sunday. So what ended up happening? People took to Twitter, no surprise there. But what French Twitter users did, which was very creative, is they used a hashtag called Radio Londres. Now, it's Radio London spelled in French. Now, this is a little bit of a cryptic for anybody who doesn't speak French.
But goes back to the Second World War,
It goes back
right?
to Charles de Gaulle when he was in the Second World War. He was sending coded messages from London, thus the Radio Londres. And for those of us who are not native French speakers, it was very difficult to understand. But they were able to get through the predicted results and at the same time try to avoid those CSA, which is the government's rules on predicting the outcome of the election before the 8 o'clock deadline.
Knowing you as I do, I imagine you give these rules short shrift because they were written before the internet was even born.
These rules to me are just absolutely moronic and stupid, and they're completely out of sync with the current times and where we are today. This is really from a time when government and media could control the flow of information, from an analog era when TV and radio stations and newspapers were really just TV, radio, newspapers. There wasn't social media, there certainly wasn't the internet, and these are out of sync with the times. Let's take a look really quickly here at one of the sites that did break the ban, but of course they were not French. This is Radio TV Belgium, and on their Twitter feed during the elections, they were actually putting out live information about the results that were coming in, the exit polls, that very type of information that people were not supposed to put in France. French authorities are considering action against them, but at the same time, these laws do not apply to non-French organizations and people outside of France. So that's really one of the big challenges here. In a world where French media is not exclusively in France, how do you control this? 10 people? Certainly not enough.
And 3 million French Twitter accounts. Obviously, the spread of information was pretty quick. Now, it did seem that Twitter users were enjoying being able to commentate on the election through this means, didn't it? There were lots of humorous tweets that we saw popping up. But if I look at the serious side of this, just to play devil's advocate for a moment, I mean, there were threats that if the results were too close, the election could be annulled because of interference on the part of social media users. So are we being responsible citizens?
Yes and no. On the one hand, people were very concerned about this threat that the elections would be annulled, and in part that was because we just didn't know what was going to happen in this round of elections and the role that social media is playing. This was really the first presidential campaign where social media has played a role at all. Now, we've seen social media very active in U.S. elections, not in French. And, you know, bear in mind, Nicolas Sarkozy just opened his Twitter account this year for this campaign, so it's also very new, and that was really the big question hanging over this election. Again, a lot of lessons were learned to this election. The things will change definitively before the next one in 2016. No, 17. There we go, 2017. 5 years from now.
We will see that rulebook rewritten. Thanks very much for that, Eric. I'll be joined by our video games reviewer in Test24. Stay tuned for that next. Alex Mercer is back. He's the hooded protagonist of Prototype, the 2009 open-world action video game created by Radical Entertainment. For the second instalment, Mercer has morphed from predator into prey. He's being hunted by a new protagonist, James Heller, a soldier who wants revenge. Jimmy Jean-Louis, one of the stars of the US TV series Heroes, is the spokesperson for the game. Tech24 asked the Haitian what draws him to the character of James Heller.
The quality of that game is just amazing, and he does things that no other human being can do. He has up to 4 powers at the same time that he can use. I only had 1 on Heroes, so for me this was way better. And the reasons behind behind his madness, his desires to find Alex and kill him, or real reasons.
Someone else who might feel he's James Heller is our video games reviewer, Mark Edwards. Thanks for being with us, Mark. You've played this game all weekend. What do you make of it?
It's great. It's it's a good game. It's certainly a step up from the last one. You know, we take the action 14 months after the virus has hit Manhattan, and you are incorporating Sergeant James Heller. And what they've done is they've created a very cinematographic feel to it. So you kind of incorporate this sergeant, and the first 10 minutes you barely play the game. What you do is you're effectively watching a great Hollywood movie, and suddenly you really do feel like, I want to pursue Alex Mercer, who was the original protagonist, as you said. And yeah, it's bigger, it's better. I think what they've really done is, because he's not a famous character per se, he's a brand new character, they've able to give him every single superpower that you could ever want. So we've got Wolverine's claws, for instance. We've got Spider-Man. He's got this new ability to be able to sort of throw these webs of organic tissue out. It's the studio that made The Incredible Hulk, so you're able to jump over buildings and fly in the same way that Batman does.
So he's a mixture of a lot of other superheroes, but a kind of unknown character, so we can synthesize them all. And something that that Jimmy was saying is that this game seems a little bit of fusion with gaming, a fusion of cinema, with gaming. And I'm just interested to know if you saw that in the graphics.
Absolutely. It's an open world game. You discover 3 different zones, quarantine zones. There's the green, the yellow, and the red. The red is where all hell has broken loose. Very Resident Evil, mutants just going all over the place. And then the other zones, there's a quarantine zone. And there's different types of play. Stealth is a lot more involved in here. You've got this new Predator-style kind of sonar where you're able to hunt people down. They've really gone bigger and better, far better than the first prototype.
Well, let's talk about the first one, because it really kind of stayed in the shadows of the Batman franchise and also Assassin's Creed, but it was a steady seller. Is your prediction this time, this is the slasher sequel that fans have been waiting for?
I think this really is. It's something that, it's big on gore. So, as you say, the slasher sequel, absolutely. But they've really gone for more graphics, and they've changed the gameplay. So whereas the first one, you're just button bashing the whole time, this one, there's slightly different aspects of the game which are involved. I think it will make a great movie as well.
€70 release date, 24th of April for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. You would recommend buying it, in a word?
Yeah.
Thanks very much for that, Mark Edwards. And that's just about it from the Tech24 team for now. Catch up with us, of course, on the social network. Go to the URL coming up in the corner of your screen. And please remember as well to follow our Twitter feed. Now, sending our planet a love letter, that's the theme of this week's closing clip. NASA is calling on science buffs and filmmakers to send in short videos extolling the beauty of the blue marble. The contest began on Sunday to coincide with Earth Day, and the winner will get behind-the-scenes access to a rocket launch. We'll see you again next week.